Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is David, and in this video I'm going to show you how to play the game Drako. Drako is a two-player game where one player will be playing 3 dwarves, the other player will be the red dragon, and this is a last man standing battle. The dragon can win by defeating all 3 of the dwarves or by having the dwarves running out of cards. The dwarves only can win by defeating the dragon. So please let me show you how it's played. The dragon player will play the dragon in the center space of the board. The dwarf player will place his or her 3 dwarves somewhere on the board, and this is the advised starting position, but you can choose to place them wherever you like. Then the dwarves will get this dwarf board where there is one net token and there's one fury token. I'll tell you what they do in a minute. You will take your dwarf deck and draw 4 cards from it. Also, the dragon player will have a dragon board, will have a deck of cards, draws 4 cards from it, and then you're ready to start. In your turn you can do 2 actions. However, the dragon player will always start the game, and as the starting turn, the dragon player can only do 1 action. Then the dwarf player can do 2 actions, and then also from then on the dragon player can do 2 actions. So 2 actions each time. And your action is either drawing 2 cards from your deck or playing 1 card. So during your turn you could draw 4 cards, or you can play 2 cards, or you can play 1 card and draw 2 cards. That's up to you. And aim of the game is to defeat your opponent, although the dragon player also can win when the dwarf player has run out of cards. Well, drawing a card is simple. You draw the top 2 cards from your deck. By the way, you can never have more than 6 cards in your hand. If you draw over 6 cards, you have to discard cards until you're back at 6. And basically, the dragon can, when playing a card, do 4 actions: move, fly, attack, or fire breath. Well, to move, you simply play a card that has the footsteps on it. In this case, you can move the dragon 2 spaces. So you simply move them 2 spaces on the board anywhere you want. You cannot step into a space that has the dwarves on them. Or in this case, you can move 1 step. Or you can play this card when you are being attacked to defend from the attack. You can only do, even if there are 2 actions on the card, you can only do 1 action of the card. This is the fire breath. In this case, you do 2 damage with your fire breath, and the fire breath is a single line. However, if there are multiple dwarves in the same line, and now I would do a fire breath, then both of these dwarves will get the 2 damage. And also the dwarves have shields in their deck, so they can prevent damage. So the dwarven player could now play this card to cancel the attack for one of his dwarves. If he wants to cancel the attack for both of his dwarves or defend it, then he has to play 2 cards that have a shield, and then none of the dwarves get damage. So also when the dragon gets attacked, it can play a shield card to cancel the attack or cancel the damage. When the dragon player plays a fly card, it can simply move anywhere on the board it wants, on an empty space. And finally, it can attack using a bite. So in this case, it will bite a dwarf that is adjacent to him, and he will deal 2 damage to that dwarf unless the attack is cancelled. When you cancel an attack, you cancel the full amount of damage, not just 1 point, but the entire attack. So the dragon can walk, fly, attack an adjacent dwarf, or do a fire breath, dealing damage to all dwarves in one path. So the dwarven player will always try to prevent getting into a situation where there are 2 dwarves in one line, so the dragon cannot attack 2 dwarves at once. The dwarves have on their cards also move, attack, and block, and they have 2 special actions. With this symbol, you can move 1 dwarf 1 space, or you can have 1 dwarf attack for 1 attack point. But when you want to attack with the axe, you have to stand adjacent to the dwarf. So in this case, you can only use this dwarf to attack the dragon. This card you can use to block an attack, so outside of your turn, or you can use it to have 1 dwarf move 2 spaces. And in this case, when there are 2 feet, you can have 2 dwarfs move 1 space. You cannot use it to move 1 dwarf 2 spaces. You have to split 2 dwarfs 1 move each, although you can also choose to play this card and only move one dwarf. Or in this case, two different dwarves can do one attack, but then you have to have two dwarves adjacent to the dragon in order to completely do this action. But you can also play that card when you only have one dwarf adjacent to the dragon, but then of course you only do one attack. But since the dwarves also have a bow, you can use this card to shoot an arrow. However, just like the dragon breath, the shooting dwarf has to have a clear line, clear sight to the dragon, and there can be no dwarf in its way. So in this case, there's a straight line to the dragon, so he can shoot. Should there be a dwarf over here or over here, he cannot shoot because then the arrow would hit his own teammate. And we have the dwarf that will throw a net. When you're playing it for this symbol, then the dwarf with a net will throw his net, and he'll place this token next to the dragon. This means the dragon cannot move or fly anymore. It is immobilized. It can still attack and do damage, but it can't move anymore. And the only way to get rid of this net is to spend two actions, so basically an entire turn doing nothing, to get the net returned to the net dwarf. So in the next turn it could maybe throw the net again. So those are the possible actions of the dwarves: move, fight adjacent, or fight with an arrow from a distance, or use the net to immobilize it. When the dragon does damage, it always does damage to the type of dwarf it attacks. So in this case it could choose, but if it was like this, then it automatically attacks the dwarf that's in the middle in this case. Oh, I forgot, this one has the Fury token. This Fury token can only be used once during the entire game, and then the dwarf player can take 3 actions, but as a penalty takes also 1 wound on this dwarf. So on the middle dwarf. But now he can take 3 actions instead of 2, but that's only once a game when using this Fury token. Once a dwarf gets enough wounds that all his life points are gone, then that dwarf is out of the game. It is knocked over. This also means when shooting down this dwarf, you cannot shoot arrows anymore because the dwarf with the bow has gone. By taking out the dwarf with the net, the dwarf player is not able to play the net token anymore. But of course also the dwarves attack the dragon. The first 4 damage to the dragon will go to his armor. Nothing will happen. But then whenever the dragon gets attacked, the dwarven player can choose where to place the damage. He can place up to 2 damage on his wings, and once there are 2 damage over here, the dragon cannot fly anymore, so it can only walk. If you place the 2 damage over here, the fire breath has gone, so the dragon can no longer use his fire breath actions, and we have 3 wounds on the bottom. Now the dragon cannot walk anymore, although it still can fly, and thus of course during the game you will get him both the wings destroyed and his feet. That means from now on the dragon cannot move or fly anymore, so it might become easier to defeat it. And so play continues until either the dwarves have killed the dragon by having all wounds on his board, like this. The dragon of course wins when all 3 dwarves are defeated, but also when the dwarves run out of cards. Then the dragon is considered the winner. So both players will move tactically around the board, try to prevent your dwarves from being in one line so they won't get fire damage. But also the dragon will try to prevent getting in a line with the bowman so that that player cannot shoot an arrow, and try to attack and defend against each other. So that is how you play a game of Drako. If you have any questions about this game, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. My name is David, thank you for watching and hope to see you next time.